Have you ever wondered how global agreements impact the tourism industry? Welcome to an exploration of the General Agreement on Trade in Services, or GATS, and its connection to the world of tourism. In this enlightening journey, we'll touch upon the intriguing history of GATS, a legacy that has shaped the way we understand international trade today. We will delve into the basic agreements that form the backbone of GATS and how these tenets have been instrumental in guiding global trade policies. As we navigate through these waters, we'll specifically focus on the intersection of GATS and tourism. We'll examine how this international agreement affects the tourism industry and who truly reaps the benefits. We'll also address some of the criticisms surrounding GATS. This will give us a well-rounded understanding of its impact on tourism. So, are you ready to dive into the world of international trade agreements? Let's get started. To understand the General Agreement on Trade in Services, or GATS, we first need to delve into its history. The roots of GATS can be traced back to the establishment of the World Trade Organization, or WTO, in 1995. The birth of WTO was a momentous occasion, marking a new era of global trade, with GATS being one of its key cornerstones. Before we go further, we need to understand what GATS is. In essence, it's a treaty among WTO member nations created to regulate international trade in services. The primary goal of GATS is to gradually eliminate barriers to trade in services and to promote economic growth and development. It covers a wide array of sectors, from banking and telecommunications to education, and yes, tourism. Now, let's take a quick step back to see how GATS came into being. In the 80s and early 90s, the world was witnessing a shift in economic dynamics. There was a growing recognition of the role of services in the global economy and the need for a system to manage this rapidly expanding sector. This led to the Uruguay Round of Trade Negotiations, a marathon 8-year discussion among member countries of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, or GATT. The Uruguay Round, which lasted from 1986 to 94, was the most extensive in GATT's history, and it led to the creation of the WTO. One of its significant outcomes was the birth of GATS, the first multilateral framework of principles and rules for trade in services. GATS was designed with two main objectives in mind. The first was to increase the participation of developing countries in service trades. The second was to create a credible and reliable system of international trade rules, ensuring fair and equitable treatment of all participants. So, from its conception during the Uruguay Round to its implementation under the WTO, GATS has played a crucial role in shaping the landscape of global service trade. With that historical context, we can now explore the basic agreements under GATS. So what are the fundamental agreements under GATS and why do they matter? A question worth pondering. To understand this, let's delve into the 4 modes of supply under the General Agreement on Trade in Services, or GATS. First, we have the cross-border supply. This involves services supplied from one country to another. Think of it as international phone calls where the service is produced in one nation and consumed in another. The second mode is consumption abroad. This covers services provided in one country to consumers from another. A classic example would be tourism. When you travel overseas, you consume services like accommodation, food, and transportation in the country you visit. Third on our list is commercial presence. This pertains to services provided by a company in one country, setting up branches or subsidiaries in another. Let's say an Indian hotel chain opens a branch in France. That's a commercial presence. Lastly, we have the presence of natural persons. This involves individuals traveling from their own country to supply services in another. Imagine a software engineer from the United States working on a project in Germany. So, why do these agreements matter? Well, they create a framework for how international trade in services operates. They set the rules of the game, ensuring fairness and predictability. This benefits businesses by removing barriers to trade and opening up markets. Moreover, these agreements don't just regulate trade, they also promote cooperation between countries. They encourage dialogue, helping to resolve disputes and foster mutual understanding. But it's not just about business. These agreements also impact everyday life. They shape the services we use, from the vacations we take to the phone calls we make. These agreements have a significant impact on various industries, including tourism. They influence how tourism services are provided, affecting everything from hotel bookings to sightseeing tours. So, whether you're a globetrotter or a travel entrepreneur, understanding the basics of GATS is key to navigating the complex world of international tourism. Now, let's examine how these agreements affect the tourism industry. As we delve into the relationship between the General Agreement on Trade in Services, or GATS, and tourism, it's important to understand that this international treaty has a significant influence on the way we travel and explore the world. GATS, at its core, is designed to promote open and fair trade in services, including tourism services. This means that it can impact everything from how easy it is for tourists to travel between countries to the regulations that govern tourism service providers. Let's start with the mobility of tourists. GATS encourages countries to loosen their restrictions on the movement of people, which can lead to a more free-flowing and vibrant global tourism market. This can make it easier for you to take that dream vacation to a far-off land, or for a family from another country to visit your hometown. However, GATS isn't just about making it easier for people to travel. It also has implications for those who provide tourism services. By promoting fair trade, GATS can help to level the playing field for tourism service providers. This means that a small tour company in a developing country has a better chance of competing with larger, more established firms. Moreover, GATS can play a role in promoting sustainable tourism. By encouraging countries to open up their markets, it can lead to an influx of tourists and tourism dollars. This, in turn, can provide countries with the resources they need to invest in sustainable tourism practices, such as ecotourism and cultural preservation. However, it's important to remember that while GATS has the potential to bring about positive changes, it also has its critics. Some argue that it can lead to over-tourism and strain local resources, while others believe it can exacerbate income inequality within the tourism industry. While GATS has a broad impact, it benefits certain groups more than others. So, who stands to gain the most from GATS? A question that sparks a lot of debates and discussions. The answer isn't quite as straightforward as you might think. The General Agreement on Trade in Services, or GATS, is a multilateral agreement that has a wide array of beneficiaries. First up, let's talk about developed and developing countries. Developed countries, with their established service sectors, stand to gain significantly from the liberalization of trade in services. They find new markets for their services in developing countries, boosting their economies. Developing countries, on the other hand, benefit from an increase in foreign investment and technology transfer. They get access to quality services from abroad, which can stimulate their economic growth. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Critics argue that developing countries might not reap all the potential benefits due to their lack of capacity to compete with established service providers from developed countries. Next up are the tourism service providers. The liberalization of trade in tourism services opens up a world of opportunities for them. They get access to new markets, enabling them to expand their operations and increase their revenues. However, smaller local businesses may struggle to compete with international corporations, leading to a consolidation of power in the hands of a few. Last but not least, the tourists. With the liberalization of tourism services, tourists get more options to choose from. They can enjoy better services, competitive prices, and a wider range of destinations. But again, there's a flip side. Critics argue that the homogenization of services might erode the unique cultural experiences that tourists seek. The GATS is a complex agreement with both winners and losers. It has its fair share of criticisms, with concerns over the erosion of national sovereignty, social inequality, and environmental degradation. But it also brings about numerous benefits like economic growth, increased foreign investment, and improved service quality. Now that we've covered the major points, let's summarize what we've learned. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? We began our journey through the annals of history, tracing the origins of the General Agreement on Trade in Services, or GATS, and its evolution. We learned about the World Trade Organization's birth and its core tenets that form the backbone of the GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. We then dived into the deep waters of GATS's influence on the tourism sector. Its impact is far-reaching, affecting every corner of the globe and shaping the way we travel and experience new cultures. Finally, we asked the question, who benefits from all this? We found that the answer isn't straightforward. GATS has its critics and its champions, and its effects can be both positive and negative depending on one's perspective. We hope this video has given you a better understanding of GATS and its importance in the global tourism industry. Thank you for watching.